good afternoon, everybody. It's the Cryptid Huntress. I'm Jessica Jones. Welcome in on this beautiful rainy Monday over here in Georgia. Yeah, it's raining. And I just got back. I had to go pick up my kid from school. He's not feeling well today. But the show must go on. And he's fine. He's not feeling so great. But he's laying on the couch. We're going to be just fine. There's some kind of bug. But the teacher said there's a funk going around right now. So let's just hope we all don't get the funk. Okay. But yeah, fingers crossed, vitamins taken. We're going to be just fine. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for being around here and hanging out with us this weekend. I had Brian Minnick of Montauk is Strange here in the studio on Saturday night, and we talked about Plum Island mutants. Oh man, what a great show. If you guys missed that, please go back and give that a watch. And I want to thank Brian from the bottom of my heart for being here. And he's such an expert on all things Montauk and all things Camp Hero and the Montauk program and the project. And so please support him, you guys, by purchasing his book if you can for Christmas. It's a wonderful addition to your coffee table, as we said on Saturday night. I love the Northern accents, man. I love the New York accent. Stark contrast to my Southern accent. Okay. But, yeah, we've got a wonderful show today. We're going to be talking about Dogman worldwide and some of the worldwide reports and encounters all across the globe. And yes, I say globe. I know we had Dr. John Stamey on last week, and he mentioned that he's going to be doing a flat earth conference, and that sparks the most heated debate. It does. Flat earth versus globe. I'm still a globe believer. Okay. I still believe in the globe. But I am willing to change my mind if I'm shown further evidence. But yes, we're going to be talking about Dogman encounters from all over the world. And by the way, we do have Dogman encounters himself coming on next week. Not this Wednesday, but a week from Wednesday, we have Vic Cundiff joining us on the show. And I am going to be referencing at least one of his encounters from his channel today on our show out of Germany. It is one of my favorite encounters that I've heard on his channel. And he has thousands of people who have come on his channel and on Dogman Radio to discuss their encounters. So the lady in the glass house, that's the one we're going to talk about today. If you guys will remember that. About a lady out of Germany who literally lived in a glass house and was stalked by a werewolf. Okay, so we're going to go there today. I have our good friend, Dr. Dennis Carroll, here in the studio today. It's a surprise, our surprise guest co-host today. And, you know, he has a lot of knowledge on werewolves and Dogman as well. I was thumbing through the North American Dogman Project website just before the show, and I saw his picture on there. So we got the right one today, y'all. We got the right co-host today. If you guys would like to follow along with all of my shows, please go over to my website. That's the cryptidhuntress.com. All my archives are there. You can find all the links to my social media there and also my calendar of events. And yes, I've got a lot of stuff going on this coming year. I haven't put everything on the calendar yet. But yes, please come see me on January the 18th. I'm going to be at the East Alabama Bigfoot Town Hall. And we've got a great lineup of speakers that are going to be there. Some good friends of mine will be there. And I hope that you guys will come join us at that. If you're down near Opelika, Alabama, or even in the West Georgia area or North Florida, it's pretty accessible from all those places. Even if you live in Canada or across the globe, y'all come on over and hang out with us. Also, I do have a Patreon. I have a shop too, if you guys would like to support the channel. Thank you so much, all my Patreon members. I'm going to be mailing out gifts for my VIP members today. Okay, so please, if I don't, there's a lot of y'all, I don't have your your mailing addresses. So please send those to me, thecryptidhuntress@gmail.com, or just hit me up on Patreon. Message me there and give me your address so I can send you your gifts this month. And yes, if you become a VIP member, you do get a gift, y'all. Okay. And also if you buy something out of my shop, and thank y'all, y'all are killing it over there on Etsy. Thank y'all so much for buying things out of my shop this Christmas. It means the world to me, and it helps big time. My by supporting my small business. I do appreciate y'all. And I do throw in free Cryptid Huntress merch with every purchase. Okay, so Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Shop at War Woman Goods. And also, I did put a post up on my website or on my Facebook. I shared out John Venture's post, and I didn't want to announce what was going on with him, but he's having some severe health problems. He did find out that he does have cancer, and he is having to go through. He starts chemotherapy next week, I believe, and he's in for a long haul, a big fight, y'all. And so he's not going to be able to join us again for a while. But I wanted to promote his books because we love John Vendeventer with the Relics book series. He's been a co-host and a regular guest on my show. And so please support him. Go to relicsbooks.com and purchase some of his books. You will not regret it. They're some of the best out there when it comes to cryptids and UFOs in Antarctica. All right. So we love you, John. Get better soon. Okay. Get better soon. We need you back here ASAP. Okay. Well, let's get to our show today because we do have a lot to talk about. I'm not going to be on a time crunch like I normally am because I've already got my kid at home. But let's get into it because on this episode, we're going to be talking about recent and past encounters with dogmen around the world, from American Dogman reports to horrifying, terrifying werewolf and dogman encounters in Germany, France, the Middle East, and beyond. We're going to be looking for patterns and connections, and we're even going to be talking about the, let's see, what are they called? The Hexam Heads. You guys, we're going to dive into these Hexam Heads out of the UK. I believe they are cursed objects that are attached to a werewolf, or a werewolf is attached to the heads. And of course, Dennis is also an expert on cursed objects. And so we're going to bring Dennis up. He has well over 40 decades, maybe 400 years old. He might be, Dennis. He might be a vampire. I don't know. I've never seen Dennis and a vampire or a werewolf in the same room before. But yes, 4 decades, not 40, of experience in the paranormal, the occult, cryptids, UFOs, you name it. Dennis has covered it. He also is an author and has books as well. We're going to talk about that. He's got a wonderful YouTube channel called Hunting the Shadows and a Patreon. Please be sure to subscribe over at Hunting the Shadows and become a member of his channel and his Patreon. Please help me welcome to the show our good friend, Dr. Dennis Carroll. Hey, Dennis.
Good afternoon. Yeah, people are wondering why I dress only in black and come out at night, but absolutely. I just want to say that, say to John that you are definitely in our prayers, John. Absolutely. And also, I want to mention that the War Woman Goods is the perfect place to shop for my Christmas gift. Okay, by the way. Anyway, absolutely. This is one of my favorite subjects. You know that. I'm like you. I am a dogman junkie. Okay, that's what we are. And this phenomenon is worldwide. A lot of people don't a lot of people miss that. So it's it's in this country. It's in the LBL and all these other places. This is something that has gone, and it goes back. Here's the interesting thing: it goes back deep into history and folklore and myth. So this is an interesting subject, no matter which way you look at it.
Well, it not only goes back in folklore and myth, but it goes back on maps. Dog-headed men and women have been depicted on maps since at least the 1500s that we know of. I mean, this is the Perry Reese map from 1513, I believe, was the year that this was created. And it does depict areas where there are dog-headed men, also blimmies, one of my favorites, and dragons, and I think even Bigfoots, okay, like hairy humanoids are on this map. There's all sorts of strange things on this map that aren't supposed to exist, Dennis. So it goes back pretty far.
You mentioned earlier about the flat Earth theory and the globe theory. I'm a globe person too, okay, because I don't want to fall off the edge, okay. But the main thing about this is that maps, once upon a time, they had that legend. I love that legend, that stops right here, and beyond here, there be dragons, or there be, cryptids and all that. So it kind of left it open a lot of times. But yeah, a lot of these things were detailed, especially around the Greek islands and stuff too, about dog-headed people or dog-headed men, as the case may be. And we're talking about a whole society of these people, not just sightings of them. There were like tribes and villages of these people that they talked about, them living in the mountains and places like that, especially in India and places like that as well. So it's not just Greece, it's not ancient Rome, but it is very worldwide.
It is. And you know what? I got the idea for this show just yesterday because I was actually wrapping Christmas gifts. Finally got some time to wrap a couple of gifts, and I had my phone on with my YouTube playing, and I was kind of thumbing through some videos and stuff, and one that just kept coming up was this video, and I had no idea I was actually mentioned in this video until Urso, who's here. I don't know if Urso's in the chat today, but Urso had left a comment under one of our videos, I think from this weekend, saying that, hey, I heard you mentioned in this video here, it's called The Dogmen of Sudan in Iraq, Militaristic Encounters with Middle Eastern Werewolves. And
Well,
and so, yeah, yeah, go ahead, Dennis.
They're definitely connected to the jinn, which
Mhm.
are very prevalent in that part of the world. And the jinn, of course, being the Arabian version of the demonic, supposedly can take on many different forms and shapes. And it would not surprise me if they ran into something like this. They had a problem with giants supposedly too. The Kandahar giant, that we know, the very famous case of that. And here's the thing about it: a lot of this stuff is connected to the cave systems in those areas, because that is where the abode of the jinn is supposed to be. Although the jinn can be anywhere, they can haunt people's houses, they can possess people, and so on and so on. But they are really connected to cave systems.
They are. Well, out in the Middle East, I had been given a remote viewing target a while back of the giant of Kandahar. And so we do know, and I believe that there are cave entrances potentially to inner earth, I think. And I guess most caves would be going into inner earth technically, right? But giants, dog-headed men, and I've also had Jody Cook has been on the show. It's been a long time since I had Jody on. He's the head of the North American Dogman Project. We need to get him back on soon. But he came on the channel, and I believe he talked about reports of dogmen being seen in the Middle East, almost like warriors or soldiers in the Middle East. If I recall correctly, it seems like one of them they carried swords. Okay, so it's probably pretty ancient. Okay, they probably go back to ancient times, especially if we've got a map like this Perry Reese map showing dog-headed men, the cynocephali, civilizations of dog-headed people. And it does go back. I mean, there are even stories of King Arthur fighting a whole army of dog-headed men in Edinburgh. So
Uh-huh.
it's
Well,
not uncommon.
that is the connection to the Fae. That people talk about. The fairies, or I like to call them the Fae, but that's the original name. But the Fae are very much connected to this, and I think before the show I was telling you about the Celtic werewolf. The Celtic werewolf looks very much like the Dogman that we talk about. It has the body of a man, but it has the head of a wolf or a dog. You might not pay a whole lot of attention to what you're looking at, but it is considered to be a guardian spirit. And when we get into the Hexam Heads, I believe that's another connection with some of this stuff. But you got to look at it as being sometimes called up, I think conjured up to probably do certain things. We've talked about this before on other shows. The conjuring part of Dogman, I think there is a definite, to me, having read all the many reports, eyewitness accounts, and all this other stuff, it seems to be that weighing in the balance, there is a very, very dark factor to Dogman.
There is. And, I was actually I'm not totally clumping Dogman and werewolves together because I know that some people have make the very big distinction between the two. Okay, like there's a big distinction between the two. But for the sake of the show today, we're going to talk about both. Okay, even though I said it's Dogman worldwide, some people think they're the same thing. Some people don't. Okay, so we're going to go over werewolf and Dogman reports and sightings today. I mean, basically, if I were to see something that looked like a bipedal Dogman, whether it be a werewolf or a Dogman, they gotta kind of look the same, I would think. And we'll
Well,
talk about that in a little bit.
if you see something like that, Jessica, you're not going to ask for ID. Are you a werewolf or are you a Dogman? Show me your card. You're not going to wait for something like that because I think they're interchangeable. I think a lot of people are seeing one or the other, but they may be misidentified sometimes. But when you go to places like, just like, for instance, the very famous cases of these things being seen in Cannock Chase in Great Britain, around the moors and some of these other places. I mean, there are tons of reports, and you would not think this on an island as small as Great Britain. So many reports of Dogman being seen, or werewolves, whatever, as interchangeable, like we said. There's something definitely going on here, without a doubt.
It's shocking how many werewolf and Dogman sightings there are out of the UK, and I've been looking into that a bit myself. So this is an interesting comment here. I wanted to bring this up. Chicky Blue says, recent Dogman sighting, the man unalived a Dogman. The military told them they unalived their property. Yeah, I've actually been told to be very careful about, first of all, disclosing if, when and if my team ever goes out and we do like a Dogman investigation and things like that, because it is very sensitive. It's very sensitive, and some of them are government property.
We don't ever want certain entities to know what our plans are. That's definitely a big no-no, absolutely. And there are interested parties, as we'll say. I'm not going to get too deep into that, but there are interested parties out there that would definitely like to know what we're doing and what we're up to. And I think if something like this was definitely unalived by the military, it's going straight to the labs or whatever it is that they have set up for this stuff. You're not going to find out that much about it. You may hear a little bit about it, but here's the thing about this thing: they are definitely telling their soldiers and people like that, you do not talk about these things. You don't mention these things. There are, and we've talked about this before, being pressured by their command not to say or do or release any kind of information about this. And just to give you a quick example, you can talk to forest rangers and park officials. They do not want to talk about this. Very seldom you'll find one that will talk about it because they're under pressure not to talk about it. And this is very much, Jessica, like the UFO flaps of years ago, when a lot of the pilot, and it still goes on to this day, a lot of the airline pilots saw UFOs and they hushed them up. You don't talk about that if you want to keep your job, and that's the way it goes with our military. If you want to, stay in the right lane that you need to be in, you don't talk about these things. It's a hush hush thing. But once in a while, you get little leaks in the water troughs, you might say. You get a little leads on some of this stuff. But that's just the way it works. That's what we're dealing with here.
Yes. Well, lucky for us in the United States, we have, the North American Dogman Project. Our good friend Kenny, aka Star Fox, he's their historian, and he does updates on their website, and they do have maps. They have a great system of, taking reports of dogman sightings, werewolf sightings. It's mostly, I think they kind of focus on dogman, of course, but to put them on their maps so you can get a good idea of where the sightings are. And also they have regional directors of all the regions all over the United States. So there's a pretty good accounting of some of the dogman sightings. Of course, it's not all of them, but it's a good portion of them, I believe. So we have that, and I was really surprised, Dennis, to come across a similar map out of France, which is actually pretty updated too. This is from 2023. I did find a map of dogman sightings. Okay, I believe it's werewolf and dogman sightings. Now, those are not the names of the dogmen in there on each of those regions that have a name there. Though that's the first name of the people who reported the sighting. And so that's a good chunk of France right there, which isn't really shocking to me.
We mentioned that at the beginning that there are a lot of forests in France, definitely, that still remain. But here's another interesting correlation. I wonder how many of those areas are actual battlefields.
Oh, good question. Well, how much of that area is owned by their government as well? I mean, did they have national parks like we have here in the United States? I think that's a valid question.
I'm sure they have secured areas, definitely, without a doubt.
Mm-hmm.
And but then I have to wonder about the battlefield thing too, because very much like old Green Eyes, we've talked about a lot. There are connections to battlefields with these things, just like there are to cemeteries. And I would like to know how many cemeteries are in some of those areas as well, because that is another distinct connection with Dogman.
It is. Actually, when we were at that forest in Alabama, when we went on a dogman hunt with cryptid warfare operators, we hiked in and we passed two separate cemeteries. Once you hiked off the trail a little ways, there were two cemeteries, very old. One of them had Revolutionary War soldiers buried in it. Okay. I'm sure there were older ones than that out there that were unmarked and stuff too. I mean, this was really old land out there.
I actually just recently fielded a werewolf report that was right down the road from a cemetery. This keeps popping up time and time again. What is this cemetery connection thing going on,
Yeah, well, what William Nighthawk says that it's because the lands are cursed. And a medicine man at some point, or a medicine woman, or shaman, had at some point cursed or blessed that land, depending upon how you look at it, to conjure up cryptids.
That would go with a lot of native lands, but all of these are not native lands. I mean, not all of them are areas like that. I would think they would be more prevalent around the old burial sites, definitely, because they looked upon that as sacred. They would put curses and guardians upon that type of land, without a doubt. But not all of it is that. I mean, there's something else going on with a cemetery connection.
Oh yeah, for sure. May says, can we talk about, instead of werewolves, talk about the wolf people or the wolf humanoids? Oh, interesting. Well, maybe they're they sound very similar, actually. Well, okay, so like in France, there's a legend, and I was given that as a remote viewing target at least a year or two ago, and it was a legend that actually really happened. They called it
the Beast of Govardhan. Yeah, very
yes.
interesting case. That is one of the most famous werewolf legends in the world, and to this day, there's still a lot of conjecture on that. My good friend Ken Gerhardt did a documentary on this. I mean, they actually sent him over there to document a lot of this. He went to the actual place where a lot of these attacks took place, and where the beast was supposedly killed by a blessed bullet that brought it down, supposedly. But there's a lot of conjecture. This thing was not even a wolf. It may have been somebody's pet hyena that was turned loose.
I think it was a hyena, and we talk about hyena dogmen. That seems to be very prevalent right now with a lot of the sightings. I know people personally who, when they had a dogman encounter, it was a hyena type dogman, which is not even a dog, by the way. Okay, hyenas aren't, but that's what it looked like.
Another
Um,
great experiment, Jessica, would be the hyena because it has,
mhm,
of course, it is connected to the canine family, and
yeah.
that would be a perfect thing for research as well, especially in places like Africa and all that where it's more prevalent. But there are hyenas all over the world in zoos, and supposedly there have been sightings of these things. And once upon a time, many, many eons ago, on the North American continent, we had hyenas.
Mm,
That's the interesting
we
thing.
did. Yeah, well, I had Mr. E from Cryptids of the Corn came on the show last year and talked about the Appalachian hyenas. Okay, because I do
Mm.
most of my research in the Appalachian Mountains. Even the dogman hunt that we went on was in the Appalachians as well. Okay, so it was in that area, the very bottom tip of the Appalachian Mountains is where we were for that, and a lot of Bigfoot sightings there. And I think that we were surrounded by Bigfoots that when we were there, and it probably wasn't dogmen when we got there, but I think initially it could have been dogmen
There's a
that
lot of
surrounded our
strange,
friend.
stuff in the Appalachians, absolutely. And another thing that we can think about too with these things is that there is a very prevalent legend in the Appalachians of this being connected to black magic and sorcery and conjuring up these types of animals. Here's something else we can consider. We have a jaguar. The jaguar is native to the North American continent. A lot of people don't know this, but the jaguars were almost killed out, but they are coming back now. They are found in lower parts of Alabama, parts of Texas, down in that area, and even there may be some in the Florida Panhandle area. So they are making a comeback. So out there in the woods with you, Jessica, you may have some jaguars.
We probably do. And yeah, the jaguardi, I think is how you pronounce it. They have this other thing like a jaguar that's seen in Texas a lot now, and out in the Southwest. So it's just something else to look out for. And I think that a lot of people who have been attacked by what some people think could have been a dog man, I think a lot of times that's actually big cats that are attacking them because they do jump down from the trees, and you never know what hit you most of the time because they'll get you from behind and they'll go for your neck. So
Hmm. So while you're hiking through the woods, you got to keep your eyes in the trees too.
yes.
You never know what might be waiting up there, lurking to jump on you. I saw a film the other day where a jaguar actually went on somebody's patio and took off the family dog for dinner. Uh, these things are very
Oh,
deadly. We
horrible.
have to understand that nature doesn't play favorites and it doesn't have morals. It's not good or bad. It's just doing its thing to survive. And hopefully you don't get in the way when it does that.
Oh man, if you want to see some gnarly action when it comes to the force of nature, when it comes to some of the wild animals, there's a I don't know if it's like a YouTube channel or a social media site. It's called Nature is Metal. Nature's Metal. It's wild. Yeah, go if you want some action packed. I mean, it's not for the squeamish or the faint of heart, but Nature is Metal, and it is metal. It is. Um, so Moondog has an interesting comment here. St. Patrick not only drove snakes from Ireland, but he also drove werewolves from Ireland. Are you, is that have you heard that, Dennis?
Yeah, that's a very prevalent legend in Ireland, definitely. And the thing about it was the church looked down upon the Celtic werewolves. Although the Celtic werewolves were guardians, they were looked upon as being good and not bad. But the church didn't take that look, didn't take that tactic with it. The church said, "Oh, they're just evil. They're things of Satan or whatever. We'll get rid of them with the snakes," kind of a deal. So I think that was supposedly what happened with that. But once upon a time, there were supposed tribes of warriors who were werewolves in Ireland. So they were looked upon as a good force by the Celtics.
Well, I've also talked about the berserkers, and the potential Viking werewolves. Uh, over there as well. So, I mean, I know I'm descended from Vikings.
The Vikings had the Ulfadar. The Ulfadar were the wolf berserkers. They were worse than the bear berserkers. Okay, these guys, and a lot of this stuff was the enhancement of drugs that would take. They certain plants and all that they used that would heighten their consciousness, so that these men became the animals of the skins that they wore. They lost their humanity with these drugs. These guys were terrible on the battlefield. You did not want to run into them because they would even turn on their own kind. They were like sharks in the water. They were just killing and indiscriminately killing on the battlefield. They were a force to be reckoned with.
Wow. Yes, I would not. That's the last thing I'd want to encounter on a battlefield. I mean, it's bad enough to be in a battle and having to battle for your life, but to come against some bunch of werewolves, man. I've seen Underworld. I know how vicious those things can be. Moondog Davis says St. Francis helped a village in France that was being attracted or attacked, maybe by werewolves, by speaking to their leader after one of their werewolves was mistaken as a wolf, unaliving a child. Interesting.
Well, a lot of times there were bounties, unfortunately, put on wolves. No, wolves got a bad rep, okay? Down through time and history, there are very few actually documented wolf attacks against human beings. Most of the time, the wild wolf will avoid you. That's just the way they are. And, they have the families of wolves are set up more like military units. I don't know if you've ever studied wolf behavior that much, but it is
Yes.
fascinating. These wolves and the Native American peoples of this country call the wolves a nation. They were like a nation, like another tribe of people, because of the family unit that they have. And I think this was one reason why people in ancient times feared the wolves, because they were so darn well organized. They
Yeah.
scared them, I think.
Well, we actually sometimes we will utilize the way the wolf pack moves when you're out in the woods and you're doing cryptid research, even when you're out in the field, or even just not even researching, just out there doing whatever. If you got a big group with you and you're walking through the woods, we don't want to end up statistics in a David Paulides book. Okay, so it's important that you put, the stronger men or women or warriors, whoever it is, the ones that are the big protectors in the very back, in the back and in the front, basically. And then you put the weaker people, like the children, in the middle. And there's a hierarchy to it. Okay, but it all there's method in the madness, and that's
And
what the wolves do.
think about the Wolvers of Scotland. They are half men, half wolves. They had the dog head or the wolf head kind of a thing. And by the way, this is a symbol that runs through a lot of the old families and clans of Ireland and Scotland. You'll see wolf heads on a lot of the heraldry and stuff like that. As a matter of fact, there used to be a very famous gas company that was called Wolfhead Gas. So a lot of this stuff is still related. It is deep in our psyche, and it is deep in our history and folklore and culture.
It is. Speaking of which, Edgar had put in a comment about the twins, the boys, that I guess they were from Rome, right? They were leaders of Rome? I can't remember. Romulus and Remus. Okay, and I know Romulus and Remus from growing up around Rome, Georgia, because a statue of the two boys drinking from the teats of the she wolf is on the courthouse steps in Rome, Georgia, and it was sent over from Rome, Italy, I believe. But that is on the courthouse steps. And my mom used to tell us a story about it when we were kids. Every time we passed by.
I think there was once upon a time a connection between Rome, Georgia, and Rome, Italy. Rome, and I think there was some kind of a cultural exchange or something like that going on. But yeah, definitely there was. If you look back in a lot of southern cities, they are named after famous place names in Europe. and all that. And Rome, of course, I've been to Rome, Georgia. I've seen that statue. It is fascinating that you got that part of mythology here where we're at. But yeah, there's been a lot of stories of that down through time of people actually being raised by wolves because, like I said earlier, the wolves have a family like. They have a family unit. They look out for each other. There's one wolf that has a job that stays at the end of the line because he's the one that watches their flank. You know, I mean, they're smart. They're incredibly smart and intelligent in the way they handle these things. And I could see wolves actually raising someone like a child or something like that because we have, and I think you've seen this too, Jessica. We've seen dogs. Well, I'm talking about domesticated dogs. They'd end up living in wolf packs.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I've seen videos of feral children who were raised by wild dogs. They may not have been wolves, but wild dogs, maybe wolves. And the children actually have taken on the characteristics of all the behaviors of the dogs. I mean, all the behaviors. And that, it's kind of a different topic because that gets into the feral people. Um, but I mean, it's related, right? And it's very interesting, the psychology behind all of that.
And the most famous one of all, of course, is Tarzan of the Apes.
Yeah.
That Edgar Rice Burroughs wrote about. He actually got these ideas from actual supposed cases of people being raised by animals in the wild. And that includes apes, it includes wolves and dogs, like you said. It's not that far fetched that something like that could happen. Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. Somebody in the chat had a good question. I can't find it, but it was asking. I think it was kind of talking about what happens if a werewolf bites you, and I think it went on to talk about being allergic to dogs or something. But that's actually a pretty interesting question, though. What happens if a werewolf were to bite you, Dennis? Do you become a werewolf at that point? I mean, I would think you wouldn't survive if a werewolf bites you once. It's probably going to bite you more times.
Well, that's kind of a double-edged sword answer to that. Okay.
Right.
The one thing part of it is if a regular werewolf who has been brought about by dark magic and all that bites you, you're probably not going to become a werewolf per se because of that. Most of the time, they're going to eat you. You're not going to survive anyway. They're going to eat you and do whatever it is they do to you. But if you're bitten by a cursed werewolf who is living under the curse, it supposedly its bite will pass that curse on to you.
Mm. Curse. Oh man, that's something that comes up a lot, and I guess this is a good a time as any to start talking about these cursed heads, Dennis, that we were going to talk about today. I believe they're called the Hexam Heads, and they really reminded me of a couple of other things that we've talked about here on the channel before. When it comes to cursed objects and even potentially being related to cryptids, potentially, um, at least paranormal. Let's just say paranormal. The Hexam heads are actually connected to a werewolf, which is, I mean, to me, that's kind of it's kind of special. Okay, I'm not saying it's a good thing, but I'm saying it's unique. Maybe unique is the word, because when we hear about these cursed objects like the Catskill crone, Barry Littleton gave me this as a remote viewing target not too long ago. And this was found in the Catskill Mountains in a cave. Some gentlemen took it home, put it in their backpack, and it started moving by itself. Their house became cursed. Okay, there was all sorts of paranormal activity. It was very dark. Dark things started happening. So these guys gave it to a museum. And then the people at the museum ended up making a documentary about it because it was so cursed, and the paranormal activity got so bad they ended up taking it back to the cave, back where it originated from. So we have that. We also had the Bell Witch as well. That was one of my remote viewing targets a long time ago. I've even had John Bell's fifth great grandson on our show. Okay, and so he came on and we talked a little bit about that. Dennis, you were on the show with us actually when he was on. His name's Derek. Okay, so Derek was on. You and I and Derek did a show together. We talked about the land between the lakes because he lives at the land between the lakes. today. But when people go to the Bell Witch Cave, if they leave there and have one little pebble in their shoe or take a rock or any kind of item from that cave, they become cursed, and their life goes down the tubes. And
A lot
this,
of cursed objects, Jessica,
Mhm.
come with an attachment of a guardian. A spirit that is attached to that item. Matter of fact, I had a case years ago where I was given a cursed object to get rid of these people. It was an actually carved statue, by the way. And I will not bring it in my house. I have it outside, sitting outside on the outside where it needs to stay. I will not bring it inside. Certain things like this are not good to fool around with because they have a very evil aura around them. They have a very evil content to them, just like that with the Crone and the Catskills thing, which is a very interesting case. And I think that's why. And by the way, the nails are driven in that statue because it's trying to hold something in that statue, very much like a Dybbuk box in that respect. Yeah, and that's why you got that stuff going on. I talked to Barry about that. That was before you had the show on that. That was probably what was involved in that thing. I would never have brought that thing back. It would
oh,
still it would have remained in that cave definitely. And
yeah.
that should be a lesson for a lot of people. You do not mess with certain items like that. And that brings us to the Hexam Heads. And that is a very strange and interesting case because I think without a doubt they definitely had a guardian spirit like attached to them.
Oh, I would think so too. And I became interested in the Hexam Heads when I saw a video clip from a 1971, actually a 1976 BBC report out of the UK. There was a okay, and this I just saw a clip of this because the report had been it aired one time and it got taken down and it was put into the archives where nobody could find it. And I think in the clip they said, well, because of AI, they were able to regenerate it because I guess it had kind of disintegrated or something. Back in the 1970s, they didn't have all the digital stuff we have today. So it says in 1976, it was a current BBC current affairs report, a nationwide report on a werewolf that was associated with a set of stone heads found by children by Hedron's Wall on the border between Scotland and England. It was um, it once haunted everyone who touched them or saw them, and these were a series of little heads, like carved heads, that some little boys found, very much like the John Bell witch story, where the little boys found that skull and the tooth fell out into their porch, and then the house became cursed. Now, these are drawings of these little heads, and they weren't any bigger than the palm of your hand. Okay, that's what they look like right there. Very, very strange little carvings there. We got some more pictures here. There they are. Those are the originals right there. You can see how small these things are. And there's even newspaper articles, myth of the evil heads. Okay, because when this came out, when that news article came out, people got very upset and they got scared because, oh my God, there's a werewolf attached to these things. And I'm going to tell you how they know there's a werewolf attached to them. So they
I
say,
think without a doubt, Jesse, if you look at those things, they look very Celtic looking. Okay, and the
mhm,
Celts had a lot of settlements in those areas definitely years ago. And of course, the Celts were up into the Scottish Highlands, especially. That looks very Celtic looking, and it would not surprise me one bit that it does not have some type of Celtic guardian spirit with it. Then it would definitely take the form of a wolf, like I mentioned earlier about the protective part of the guardian Celtic werewolves. That would not surprise me a bit. And when I first read about this story many years ago, and of course the heads have mysteriously vanished now. But the interesting thing about this is that the description of the heads. If you look at those drawings on that, they look kind of wolfish. They look kind of they're not human looking. If you look at it that way, you know what I mean.
Or
It's
even
very
ETs too. They do look. There's something different about them. They do look creepy, very creepy,
hmm
for sure.
And I think without doubt, something like that would definitely come with some type of a spiritual attachment to it, especially that ancient. It looks very old. Now, whether they were made like in the 15th or 14th centuries or whatever, they may not be thousands of years old, but they are very old. And
Well,
I'm
mhm.
not gonna, there's been a lot of speculation that maybe these were children's toys or something that a child was given to play with or made for a child. That's a possibility, but I don't know. I mean, why would you make something like that for a child?
Oh my gosh. Well, here's the story that goes behind it. In 1971, the Robson family, who lived in Hexham, in the northern part of England, were driven away from their house due to some strange occurrences. They began only after they discovered these two stone heads in their garden. The heads were small, about 2 inches in size. One of the heads was called the boy due to the masculine shape of the skull, and the other one was the girl due to the presence of female features and the long hair. According to the family, the heads would move around by themselves, and that wasn't all. The haunting of the Hexam Heads had just begun. Perhaps the most horrifying occurrences in the early days were witnessed by the family children. The front door to the family home opened by itself as they passed, and outside was a terrifying half sheep, half human creature. And a neighbor also saw the creature outside the front door, but by the time the family responded to the children's screams, it disappeared. So the two young boys of the family were the ones who had discovered the stones. And while they were digging in their garden, they reached into the soil, they found them, and they brought them into the house, which they probably shouldn't have done, but they didn't know any better. And they said that they knew that there was some sort of, as soon as they saw that sheep man, okay, it was almost like a goat man, I guess. They called it a sheep, maybe like a sheep squatch. They knew they were probably cursed. And so they began being terrorized by it. And it says the heads were once seen moving by unseen hands, and the bottles around the house were thrown across the rooms. Okay, so
This
but they weren't.
cursed item
Mhm.
activity, and cursed items do things like that. They give you bad dreams. They supposedly move around. They cause certain things to happen in the house, so disrupt the house or wherever it is they're at. That's the interesting part about cursed items. They take on a life of their own. They're almost like, they are sentient beings, uh, per se. It's very strange. I have actually seen a lot of videos of supposed cursed items moving around in display cases and doing some very freaky looking stuff. Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, it wasn't just their house that got haunted. The neighbor's house became haunted as well when they found these when they dug up those heads. They said that the little boy that lived next door was having his hair pulled, or the little girl, the child was having their hair pulled, and their house seemed like it was being haunted. So they started reaching out to journalists and newspapers. Specialists in Neolithic art came to study the Hexam heads, and the experts were facing difficulties in dating these stones. They could not really date them. They were examined thoroughly multiple times, but the results were always different from the last report. So it was just kind of baffling. Nobody could really pinpoint how old these things were, but they were generally thought to be linked back to the Celtic traditions, just like you've been talking about today, Dennis. Celtic background. So,
Absolutely. And I think there's been a lot of speculation that once these things were taken out of the ground, and they were put in the ground for a reason. And once they were removed, it disturbed the whole area. That included the two houses where this took place at. Uh, the best thing that they could have done, of course, they didn't think about doing it, but the best thing they could have done is put them back where they found them. Very much like the crawling of the Catskills. It needs to go back where it was, and it needs to stay there. And if they had returned those things, back to the soil from which they were taken. It might have stopped a lot of this, but they didn't consider that actually. And here's the bad thing now: since they disappeared, they can never be returned until they find them again, and they may never find them. But
That's
here's the interesting thing about stuff like this, Jessica. When you find something that has a very evil patina around it, that has a very evil connection, it seems as if they either disappear or they get destroyed somehow or another. Something weird always happens with them. I've actually seen buildings and places in buildings. I know of one right very close to where I'm at right now that actually burned to the ground, and it's almost as if they're so evil that they can't remain there. And it seems that way with objects as well. That's why a lot of these so called cursed objects are put into containers to keep them immobile and to keep them from moving or going from place to place. You have to put a lot of locks, I call them spiritual locks, around these things to keep them in place and keep them from bothering you. It's not a good idea to keep them where you live.
no.
Uh, I would advise you to, if you can, return it back where it actually came from. But it's a good idea not to bring them in your house. Definitely not bring them into your life.
Well, these are cursed objects that seem to be attached to some sort of creatures of the night. Okay, we heard about the sheep humanoid. Uh, Also,
Hmm.
we're about to get into the story about the werewolf, and so eventually there was a Dr. Anne Ross, who was she was an expert on Celtic heads of antiquity and Celtic artifacts, and so she took in these heads. These are the two little boys that found it. That's a creepy looking head that one kid's holding. I mean, they're holding right there. But she took the artifacts into her home and started researching them. Uh, she kind of exposed herself to the curse at that point, though, because she
Hmm.
reported that she saw a half wolf, half man walking around upstairs in her home. She said she followed the creature downstairs to the kitchen, after which it disappeared. Now, they interview her in that BBC film, and she
If
said
you
something. Oh, go ahead.
if you were to ask me what kind of spirits these are, I would definitely tell you they are elemental. That's the way these things are appearing, like the half goat, half man thing, or the half man, half wolf thing. These are definitely very, to me, basic elemental type spirits. They were called up by the Celts or the Druids to remain as guardians over these objects or something, or related to them in that sense. Who knows what these things may have been put on some type of an altar or what. It's
Mhm.
very interesting, but these were definitely elemental spirits.
Yes, yes. Well, this woman's story reminds me 100%. It reminds me of there's a Dogman Encounters episode 100, and it was about a woman in Germany who lived in a glass house, and she had a werewolf or a dog man that came and tapped on her window one night. She said the entire house was made of windows. There's no escaping it. She couldn't just throw blinds down and stuff. The whole house was just glass. I don't know
Hmm.
why anybody want to live in a glass house, Dennis. That's beyond me. Um, but but she said that it was tapping on the glass with its claw, and it's crinkled its nose up. And she said the same thing that this woman said. Okay, the doctor Ann Ross said it was very interesting because she said, I felt like I could not stop myself from going towards it. I was hypnotized and I felt like I needed to go towards it. So she went towards it against her better judgment. It's like her gut was telling her not to do it, but it's like her body was just like, it just went towards it. Just like the lady in the glass house out of Germany who was having this terrifying werewolf dogman encounter at her home. She was trying to hold her dog. Her dog was barking and trying to, was terrified of this thing. But they both said that they felt like they were almost hypnotized into going towards it, even though they knew that their lives were in danger.
That's, I think, that dark connection I talked about with Dogman so many times before. There's something else going on with that, definitely. And when you think about elemental spirits, Dogman would definitely fall into something category like that because it is part of a dark part of nature, like, and it would be also something that would be conjured up, definitely, in many aspects. I think there's a definitely a dark connection with this in many aspects because you have these dogman reports all the way. And by the way, living in a glass house, you do not throw stones at your neighbor. Okay, but absolutely, this is worldwide. Germany, France, the UK, Italy, Greece. It goes on and on and on. What are these dogman things? I think there is a definite connection to nature, elemental nature spirits with the dogman to a certain degree. And there may be people who tap into that for dark purposes, to do the things they want to do. But I think that's what people here are, Jessica, are definitely experiencing something along those same lines. It's different in a way than Bigfoot or Sasquatch. I like to call him Sasquatch. There's a big difference between that and Dogman in that respect. To me, Bigfoot seems to belong to nature in a way, whereas in the Dogman does not. He has a sort of an outside influence thing going on with him, and you see that cropping up with all these different encounters that people are having, just like this lady with a house talking about this hypnotizing type mesmerizing power that she encountered from this. That sounds very much like a dark spiritual thing, a dark spirit that she encountered.
It does. Well, we're dealing with a cursed object. She had a whole bunch of cursed objects in her home. She had that encounter where she clearly saw what would look like a werewolf or a dog man. She said it had the upper body of a dog or a wolf and the lower extremities of a man. She said, of a human. And she said that she chased after it. She went towards it against her better judgment, but it's almost like she couldn't help herself. And it disappeared, thank goodness. And I don't know how soon after, maybe a few days or a couple days later, her daughter, I think her daughter was around 15 years old, came home and got the key out from under the flower pot and put the key in the door. She was by herself and she had a similar encounter with the same exact creature in the house, which was pretty terrifying. Okay, so I believe they did eventually get rid of those objects out of their house, and the all of that activity did stop. It did, but it was connected to those objects, and a lot of the if you pull up some articles about this, the wolf man or the dog man, the werewolf, whatever this thing was, they describe it as an apparition. It was an apparition. That would mean it'd be more like a ghost or something that's like not tangible. Okay, but to them, they said that
Well,
it looked solid.
actually, I had a case, Jessica, many years ago, where this lady contacted me. She owned a ranch in California, and they had lived on this ranch. She and her daughter. She was raising her daughter by herself. She was a single mom, and they had a ranch, and they had horses on the ranch. The horses were being bothered by something, and they had lived on this ranch for like 10 years, and everything was going along fine. And then in the last few weeks before she called me, things began to go very strange, and said that they had paranormal activity in the house. The horses were being bothered by something. There were scratches appearing on the horses and stuff like that. And she said that her daughter one night actually saw an apparition type thing outside the window. And it was looking in the house, and she said that at first her daughter thought it was a big dog that was kind of looking through the window, leaning on the window. But said when she saw it, it was not a dog. It was more like a wolf, but it was a monstrous looking thing. It looked like a wolf that had been to a meat grinder or something, kind of a thing. And said this thing scared her daughter so badly. That's when she contacted me about it. And I told her, I said, well, have you done any? Have you brought any kind of objects in the house lately, or have you done anything different from what your routines? No, she hadn't done anything like that. And we come to find out that on her property there was an old Native American burial ground, part of her property. And what had happened, there had been, California is prone to floods a lot, and there had been a wash, and some of this Native American graveyard had washed down into a canyon like or something. So I told her that may be what was going on, and that she would have some Native American shaman come in, and do a ceremony on that and try to, quell it. So she did that. Long story short, she did that, and the activity completely stopped.
Oh,
So
wow.
what was going on was related to that burial ground. And a
Hmm.
lot of times, it won't be the object. It'll be what you may have done to the land to disturb it in some way or another. That's the thing
Oh,
you got to think about. You consider that as well.
man, I know that's why when a lot of people, when they're doing excavations or renovations, I think that's the word, renovations on old
Mhm.
homes, they start getting a lot of paranormal activity. Sometimes it's kind of demonic feeling because it seems like it's stirring something up, and I guess the spirits that are dwelling in that home don't like the changes, apparently. So I've heard about that a bunch of times, especially on ghost shows.
Oh yeah.
You hear about
If
that.
you disturb things, you run the risk of disturbing spiritual stuff as well. When you do the physical, that's what you run into. And I've had so many people tell me that, oh, we knocked out a wall of the house and we found some old stuff, or we found something in the attic and we moved it and we took it out. It's best to leave things alone where they're at sometimes, without disturbing them. I can answer your question. Jessica Jones, do dogmen take on human form? I think you kind of think about the werewolf in that respect. What do you think, Jessica? I think the werewolf can take on human form, but I don't know
Werewolf.
about dogman.
I don't think dogmen would, but I think werewolves would. By the classical sense of a dogman, I mean of a werewolf. Excuse me. In the classical sense or definition of a werewolf, I think a werewolf would. I don't think a
Hmm.
dogman would. But
Well,
I have
definitely
I have not seen a shapeshifter yet.
dogman is dogman is dogman 24/7. He doesn't change his nature in that respect. Whereas in the werewolf may be your neighbor next door. It could be somebody you know. It could be your Sunday school teacher. It could be somebody that bags your groceries at Ingles or somewhere wherever you shop. That is the interesting thing about the werewolf. It could be anybody. It could be me. It could be you, and you'd never know it until things got kind of bad and you found out the wrong way.
Yeah, you don't want that when it's too late. Jeremy, this is a great point. I've heard this before too. I believe werewolves are descended from another planet in Sirius, but also some other cases are government experiments and super soldiers. And I think that's a big aspect of this. I think a lot of them could be government experiments. I've heard that there are dogman races on other planets, and our friend Tony Rodriguez,
Let me
he
say this
mhm,
about the werewolf. Okay, the werewolf is grounded deep in dark black magic and demonic power. But these things come, I think, without a doubt, from spiritual dimensions. That would be considered another world, would it not? Different dimensions is what these things come from. Um, Without a doubt, it would be otherworldly. That's why we call things otherworldly. It means they don't belong in this world. They're from some other dimension, some other place like that. That is definitely the werewolf. But as for the dog man, like I say, some of this may be conjured too. Some of this may be coming from other dimensions as well with the dog man.
yes, it could be interdimensional and stuff. Well, as you're saying that, I'm thinking of all these videos that I've watched about because I had to dig into a little bit of that flat Earth stuff to see what everybody's talking about and talking about we've discussed the ice wall, and some people think that these are theories that are going around. I'm not saying this is right or this is true, but there are theories that they're even. outer space is not actual out there in the sky. It's actually like aliens are like living in our oceans, and and there's beyond the ice wall is actually where the other planets are and stuff. It's just wild, man. We're living in crazy times right now. But yeah, and I think everything's interdimensional. Personally, I really do. But
If you consider the vast distances of space, it does not make sense that you would get in a spaceship and go from point A to point B. That's ridiculous. Would take you untold millions of years to do these things.
yeah.
It doesn't work out. But if you can step through dimensions and doorways, and that's what we're talking about here. And these things, I think a lot of this stuff is connected to these portals or doorways through time and space. You don't have to worry about traveling in that fashion. You can just walk through the door and be where you want to be.
Hmm. That would be cool. That's why I like doing remote viewing and stuff. I can go anywhere. I can go anywhere if I want. Um, so that's kind of cool. That's just part of the remote viewing training and stuff too. So I guess I'm a multi-dimensional being, and I know I am. And I think that's a beautiful thing. We're all multi-dimensional beings, by the way. We are. It's a matter of
Some
tapping
of
into
us,
it.
I
Yeah.
think, Jessica, were born to walk between worlds. I think that's our spiritual nature to do that.
Hmm.
And that's okay with me. I enjoy that myself in that respect. To see things from different points of view
Hmm.
is very interesting.
Yes, I know. It's all about keeping an open mind about all this stuff too, and man, and just exploring it all. I love it. Good point, Brown Dwarf. Sirius Dog Star. It is called the Dog Star. Hmm.
Hmm.
Makes you wonder. Tony
Curious.
Rodriguez had mentioned. I think it was him that mentioned that he transported. He wrote this book. I can't remember the name of it. Sirius Colony Cavalier, I think is the name of his book. Y'all go check that out. Tony Rodriguez. He was a part of the secret space program. He talked about, I think he transported, if I'm not mistaken, a whole group of like a unit of dog soldiers, Talkman soldiers or something, uh, on his spaceship, he says, when he was in the secret space program. So you have to go check that out, y'all. Find Tony online on YouTube and on Rumble. You can find his stories there. Get his book because he talks about that. But
That's
I
why somebody asked me the other day about UFOs. Where do I think the UFOs are coming from? I don't think they're coming from other planets in that respect. I think a lot of these UFOs are coming from inner Earth. I think that is where their true origin lies. But there may be certain ships that transcend dimensions. Absolutely,
Mhm.
you would have UFOs that may do that as well. So it's a multifaceted answer. It doesn't have just one answer. It has several different aspects of it. But it is very interesting that not only can you think about ships doing this, but beings do it as well. And having been involved a lot in demonology, I have seen demons do some very interesting things that I think are definitely interdimensional types stuff.
Oh, oh, you said demons. That's something that I've been talking about a good bit. That keeps coming up is like cryptids and the demon connection, the demonic connection to cryptids, and I think someone in the chat earlier today had mentioned dogmen being demonic, and I don't know. I personally don't believe that all dogmen are demonic. Okay, but what do you say to that, Dennis? What do you think?
It's a possibility, and you got to look at it from several different avenues. It could be what governmental experimentation has done with it. It can be what some people are doing, conjuring and opening doorways for this thing to come through. It can have many different aspects. I, and like I said before, I just have to say this, okay?
Okay.
And I get a lot of flack from this, okay? But people disagree with it vehemently. But I believe without a doubt there is a dark aspect to Dogman. He just does not belong in nature. I can see Bigfoot belonging there. I can see other some certain cryptids that may belong there, but I just don't see him. This is a weird hybrid thing here. Where does it come from? Nature doesn't produce something like this on a scale that what we see. I think there is another answer to this. Absolutely.
Hmm. Yeah, I think there's probably something else to it for sure. And yeah, I I'm still waiting for a dogman encounter personally, and we're out there. I hate saying hunting them. That sounds bad. Okay, we're not hunting them. We're investigating them, I guess you could say. And we're actually going to be my friend Drewski and I from Cryptid Warfare Operators. We're going to be on Vic Cundiff's show
Be
on Friday night.
careful. Be careful
Yeah,
what you wish for. You might get your wish. But here's the interesting
yeah,
thing, Jessica. One thing you need to consider, and I do too. I would like to have an encounter with Dogman too. But here's one thing we need to consider. There have been so many cases on file where this encounter with Dogman has changed people's lives for the worse and not the
okay,
better. They weren't happy a lot of times with their encounters. And there's a reason for this. Like I said, I think there's a dark connection going on with this, a dark spiritual connection, and it affects people differently. Now, it may not affect us that way if we ever have an encounter, but it does affect a lot of people very badly. It changes their lives, it changes their whole perspective. It's almost as if it stains
it
their
does.
very existence or their very spiritual aspects of their being.
It does. But when I'm all geared up and I'm ready to go, I'm prepared. I've seen some weird stuff, Dennis. Okay, I've seen some weird stuff. And I've been out there. I'm prepared for just about anything. So, trust me. Listen, if I go out in a dogman attack, just know I went out doing what I wanted to do. Okay, so hopefully that'll never happen.
Well,
Uh,
here's the thing about that, Jessica. You and I are prepared spiritually for stuff like that, where some people are not. That's the bad thing about it. Some people who have these experiences are not prepared spiritually for that. That's why I say be careful to all monster hunters. Be careful about hunting the monsters because you just may find them.
yes, yeah. I find them a lot when we're out there, but just not a dogman yet. But we're working on it. We got some more trips planned too. Okay, so we're gonna come across one. But you're right, and that's where I know when I first got into doing the podcasting, I didn't go public with my research for a long time, over a decade. I kept it quiet. And when I did go public, I've met the most amazing people with the most incredible encounters. And I'm just looking in the chat right now. And I mean, we've got so many people. I mean, I've got Kelly in here too. Hey, Kelly. Primal Cries in here. We've got Adolf. We've got Brown Dwarf's a Bigfoot investigator. A lot of people that are in here have had dogman encounters or Bigfoot encounters too. And so it's just really great getting to talk to other people that have had these encounters, and it's almost like a support group. Okay, that's what I started learning that right away when I went public and I started doing shows and stuff. I started seeing that this is kind of a support group for all of us who have had encounters. Because even though I'm out there looking for Bigfoot, I am encountering other stuff that is pretty can be terrifying. And I need some support too. I got to make sure I'm not that crazy. Okay, knowing that other people are experiencing the same thing I am, and if I can bring some calmness and some peace to people with my stories and things I've experienced, I'm glad I'm here for it. Okay, I'm glad that we're both here for it, Dennis. I know you've had some encounters yourself, and I think that's the best we can do these days. So I super appreciate it. I appreciate everybody that's in here today too. We've got a wonderful chat going today.
And
A lot of interesting information.
being interested in folklore, there's that connection to that as well, Jessica. It's part of our heritage, part of our culture, no matter which way we look at it. As a matter of fact, I was talking not long ago to our good friend Ken Starfox
Hmm.
about the Anubis cult. A lot of people don't realize, how far back this goes into ancient Egypt and stuff. But the Anubis cult was a very interesting aspect of this. Of course, Anubis is the god-headed jackal-headed god of Egypt, the god of the Lord of the Dead. He was the lord over funerals and all that. But there was also a cult that believed, and it was sort of a rogue cult of priests who followed Anubis. They believed that it could reanimate bodies and bring, sort of like sort of like your Egyptian zombies in that respect. They believed that there were certain spells that could actually put spirits back in a different body or whatever. Fascinating stuff. But yet, the symbolism is still there. And Anubis still lives. He still lives all these thousands of years later because of that symbolism. But he was what, the original dog man. Okay, that was where he kind of began with that. But if you look at all of their gods, here's the interesting aspect of the Egyptian gods: they all represent some animal or another most of the time. Like the crocodile-headed god or the cat-headed god. The animals that they venerated, they gave these animals a spiritual connection. That was sort of like their totem animals, their spirit animals, their spirit guides in that respect.
Wow. Yes, I'm fascinated with the ancient Egyptian gods. And Egypt is where Anubis lived, I suppose. Okay. And so Urso has an interesting question here regarding ancient Egyptian deities. What cryptids, actually, it's cryptids, what cryptids were destroyed in ancient Egypt where they crushed the bones and covered in tar so they couldn't come back and entombed in the Apis sarcophagus? I have no idea. Do you know, Dennis?
Mhm. Well, I have heard of that. There was supposedly some manifestations of their gods that would come back, like the crocodile headed god and all that. Then that they did not destroy the god; they would entomb these things. They weren't really destroying them in the fact like it would obliterate them, but they believed that you could entomb them and that would hold them forever. So it's like sending them to another world, kind of put it that way, to the other side or to the veil, whatever tag you want to give it. And that's the way they looked on things. And they would actually send some people like this in that. So it's sort of like another world, a world between the living and the dead. And that was sort of where you ended up. It was like a curse in many aspects.
Whoa, that's wild. Very wild. I mean, one of my favorite deities would be Sekhmet, and I know she's like the vampire lady. Even though, oops, that's my alarm going off to go get my kid, but he's already home. Okay, so she drank blood or something. I forget, can't remember. I guess they had to trick her. She was so
She,
bloodthirsty. They
Sekhmet
yeah.
represented she represents, Jessica, their blood rituals that they did. She
Oh,
represents the
okay.
blood. We've talked about the red gravy a lot, on the shows. That keeps cropping
Really?
up, especially with vampires and other entities as well, not just vampires. But the red gravy was prevalent throughout the history of the world. They had to have it for
Oh,
different rituals, for doing different
oh,
things. It's still going on. It's still ongoing. Um,
oh! I
the
know what you're
Aztec
talking about.
Mayans were big on that. Oh yeah, different cultures.
Really?
I mean, what if you open the new temple, then you like sacrifice about 20 or 30,000 people by cutting their hearts out.
Yeah. So you're talking about the adrenalized blood. Is that what you're referring to? The
Absolutely.
gravy? Okay.
The thing about the blood is
Oh,
the
yeah.
life. That
Mhm.
that comes from the Bible. That is definitely a true statement. You don't live without your blood. There's so much connected to your body is not your body without its blood. That's the life of what you are. That's the essence of your life. And that's the way they look at it. And certain aspects of that blood reflect what you are. And if you were young and vibrant, that was the perfect kind of blood that they wanted, especially if that blood was adrenalized with fear or a deep emotion of some sort. It sort of put a more punch to that red gravy.
Oh gosh, the gravy. Gosh, that's so terrible when you realize what that is. It's terrible. Um, it really is. Hey, T-Bone, when you stare into the abyss, it will stare back. Yes, it will. Um, wow. I had something I was going to say that was so great, and then I totally forgot. I had one of those senior moments, Dennis. Um, because yeah. Oh,
A
and
lot.
I know there's so many people that in here, and Marina just reminded me that she'd had a dogman encounter too. She lives up near Chicago. Um, Dogmen are everywhere. Okay, they're all over the world, y'all. We have dogman reports here in Georgia. Alabama gets a lot of dogman reports all over the southeast. Really, we have. I think we probably have. I don't know if we have as many dogman reports as they do up in like Ohio and Michigan here in the
The
United States.
interesting thing about Dogman, Jessica, he doesn't just show up in the woods anymore. He is haunting our cities. He's haunting our neighborhoods. He's showing up at our doors, our windows. What's going on with that? We don't have to go out in the woods looking for him anymore. You may run into him around the next corner.
Yeah, you might. You might just yeah, I hope I do. No, I hope everybody else doesn't, unless you really want to have one of those encounters. I do. I'm cool with it. That's why I go out in the woods all the time. Okay, is to
I had
encounter
a
something that
recent werewolf case given to me a few weeks ago. This is wild, wild stuff. I won't go into it today. It's a long story, but I told the people that encountered this, you were absolutely incredibly lucky to survive to tell me the story, because that doesn't usually happen with a werewolf. And this was not Dogman. This was an actual werewolf, definitely type thing. And you got to remember, there may be a lot of people who ran into a werewolf that are not around to tell us about it.
yeah, I would think so. Yeah, that's what I was kind of saying that earlier with what would happen if you get bitten by a werewolf? Well, I think if you get bitten once, you're probably going to be bitten a bunch of times. So, uh, good luck. Okay, good luck. I know that's terrible, but that's true. But the majority of the reports that we get, and I guess this kind of goes back to, well, people who get eaten by dogmen or werewolves, you're probably you're not going to know they did, probably, because they just go missing. But the people who do live through these encounters, they seem to be pretty bland. And I don't want to say bland, okay, but benevolent, or just kind of not. They may be a little bit scary, but they don't get hurt. Okay, they're not getting attacked, and so. But like I said, we do have a lot of missing people all over the world, especially in the United States, and maybe some of them were victims of dogmen and werewolves.
Well, if you go back and look at a lot of the history, the myths, the legends, the stories of people encountering dog-headed people in different parts of the world, they usually don't talk about them, like trying to eat them or anything, that they're being attacked by these people. They're acting almost very civilized in some aspects. It's like, oh yeah, that's the guys that live next door, and by the way, they happen to have dog heads. Okay, that was kind of the way they looked at it. Ancient people did, and they didn't show a lot of fear about these people. It was almost as if, hey, we take it in stride. Yeah, we got some dog-headed people living in the mountains here. You didn't hear too much about being attacked by these things. That's the interesting part about it. And that happens with Dogman a lot. Now I know there are a lot of stories of Dogman supposedly massacring people and doing something. And you know what? That may be the way it goes. You got good people, you got bad people, you got good dogmen, you got bad dogmen that may go wild and do psychopathic things sometimes. But most of the time, Dogman lets you walk away from the encounter, and you live to tell about it. But that does not usually happen with a werewolf. You're not gonna survive. That's just the way that goes, and that's par for the course. It's like most of the time, people who run into sharks, don't survive that encounter. Some do. Some are very lucky to do that, but a lot of them don't. And I don't see that happening a lot with Dogman, though. That's the interesting part about Dogman.
Yeah, More Jimmy Payne. Yeah, I need to bring Jimmy back on. Him and James Rain. Those are some great shows. We did talk about vampires a while back. I think that was last year. A lot of good information on vampires and werewolves and Bigfoot and all that kind of stuff with the Secret Space program. But wow, yeah, this has been a pretty interesting and informative and fantastic show again, Dennis. We always have a really good conversation every time you come on here, and I did see some people that were mentioning how the cryptids have moved into the cities now, including a lot of dogman sightings are happening in our suburban areas in the United States and over in the UK. I see Andy in here. What's up, Andy? Over in the UK, we've got our UK friends in here today. Lots of werewolf and dogman sightings in the towns and in the cities. Oops, spit it out there, Jessica. Just like this, the Hexam Head, it actually happened this is in a town. It's not like out in the middle of the country somewhere. These heads were found in the city, and that's where this werewolf was showing up in these people's home in the middle of a town. So
somebody's garden, yeah.
yeah,
You never
so
know
don't
what you might
discriminate.
dig up outside. You
Yeah,
might be waiting for you in your yard, but that is very interesting, Jessica. And I'll tell you something else. We need to tell people what to do if you encounter something like this. If you have this kind of a situation going on, or you find yourself in this kind of a situation, the main thing you need to do is to stay calm, and you need to definitely call on somebody to help, somebody that you can contact, somebody like me and Jessica, or somebody else like that you know that maybe you want advice about it. But I've had a lot of people say, "What do I do if I run into Dogman or I think it's a werewolf?" The best thing to do if you run into an entity like that is, like I say, there again, stay calm, try to back out of the situation very quickly. Okay, do it very carefully, but never ever look these things in the eyes. That's the one thing you don't do. Like the woman in the glass house, don't look it in the eyes. That's the one thing you don't do, because these things have a power, sometimes a dark power to them that can overtake you if you're not careful. So don't do that, but try to back out of the situation as calm and quietly as possible. Um, that's the one way to handle these things. Another way is to be spiritually protected against some of this stuff. And that is good to have a blessed object, like a necklace or a cross or a pin or whatever. Something that, that kind of puts an aura of protection around you. Be ready spiritually for some type of a encounter like this. That's the main thing, because you never know. Like we were saying just a few minutes ago, around the next corner, down the street, you may run into something like this. I think it's becoming much more prevalent. Somebody asked me the other day, "Why is all this paranormal stuff going on?" And even people who here's the interesting thing, Justin. Even people who are not involved in the paranormal, like you and I, are seeing this. Okay, and they're asking me this question: Why is this going on? Why was there so much more activity? I'll tell you why. One of the reasons, we can blame CERN, we can blame some other stuff, but I think one of the major reasons why this increase has happened is because we are more aware of it. Our awareness is rising greater than it has ever been before. And so we are opening ourselves up mentally, physically, to these things, and of course, spiritually as well. And I think that's what's going on with a lot of this. We're becoming more aware. I think an age of awareness is taking place here.
yeah, I have to agree on that. Uh, People are seeing them; they're more aware of it. Of course, people are still walking around with their heads down on their cell phones too. So, but there is a collective consciousness that they're more prevalent in the collective consciousness, I think. And Andy decodes. What's up, Andy? What are your thoughts of dogmen in the UK? There's so many reports of dogmen out of the UK. What do
I
you
think
think?
it's very interesting. that you would have these reports on a small area like, of course, Great Britain is smaller than parts of the U.S. I think it's very interesting, and this is an island too, by the way.
Mhm.
Where is this coming from? And I've asked myself this question because I feel a lot of reports of these dogman sightings in the UK. It's very interesting that these things are seen around there you go again, close proximity to cemeteries and moors, moorlands, and forested areas with cemeteries around them. I would I would tell anybody in the UK, if you want to have a dogman experience, you need to hang out around some of the cemeteries. I think you may find something interesting there.
Or abandoned buildings too. I keep hearing about dogmen being sighted around
I do
or being
too. That's
seen
another
on.
place these things hang out, Jessica.
Mhm.
Ruins, the old ruins, and
Oh,
sort of mystical places like mounds and things like that. And that's where you hang out. Yeah.
yeah. And Kelly says, dogmen offer opportunities for us to learn and grow as a species. It's not all doom and gloom. And you are 100% right. Uh, I love it. Listen, I wouldn't be here talking to y'all today if I weren't out there chasing Bigfoots and dogmen around the woods. Okay, so
Well,
it's a
that's
I learn from it
interesting.
every day.
That's interesting you say that. Anytime I ever have any kind of encounter, I don't care what it's with, whether it's demonic or something like that. Here's the interesting thing: I always come away with it as a learning experience.
Hmm.
And I think that in broadening my horizons, spiritually, mentally, and physically as well, I think it enhances my consciousness. I always come away with it as a learning experience. I learn something new every time.
I do too, and I love learning. I never want to stop learning. I never will stop learning, and that's why I bring people like you on, Dennis. Okay, that's why I bring you on because I always learn something from you, and I learned some more stuff today, and I hope the audience did too. Uh, you even have your own channel, Dennis, and I know you've got some shows coming up. You've got a show tonight, don't you? What do you have going on your schedule this evening?
Yeah, so actually, I think next week, I think next Wednesday, I have Brian Minnick on my show from
Oh,
Strange
good.
Montauk. And then I also have Vic Condiff lined up for, I think, the week after that. So you and I, we think alike, Jessica. Great minds think alike. So anyway, I've got that going down on Hunting the Shadows. Next, this Monday coming, I will be on with my good friend Carroll Fountain for another interesting episode of the road less traveled. And then tonight on Paranormal Point of View, I'm going to be doing a review on a book by a lady I did an interview with the other day. She is actually she's a duchess. I'm doing royalty now, folks. Okay, she's a duchess, and she is also a direct descendant of Count Dracula.
Oh, you're talking about Danielle. I know Danielle, the
Yep,
Duchess. Yes,
Danielle. Yeah,
that's gonna be really good. What time is that tonight? 9 p.m. Eastern?
that's tonight at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard. All my shows 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 8 o'clock Central. And also, if you want to read any of my books, they are available on Barnes and Noble. The title of two of them is Beyond the Shadows, a field guide to the paranormal, and the other book is called The Road Unseen, a paranormal journey into high strangeness. So you can look those up on Amazon or Barnes and Noble, and you can reach me if you've got any strange stories you want to tell. You need advice. I have a consulting service. I consult with people all over the world about their paranormal problems. If you want to contact me in any way, you can do so at denniswcarroll.com or denniswcarroll@gmail.com.
Oh my gosh. My moderators have been putting the links for you in the chat this entire show. So you guys go over and check out the live chat. I've got your links in the description box down below as well. If you guys would like to click on, go support Dennis, become a member of his YouTube channel, his Patreon as well. He does have a Patreon, and purchase his books, and go subscribe to his channel, Hunting the Shadows, on YouTube. So yeah, and you can join his groups on Facebook too, Legends Trackers Society and Hunting the Shadows. So Dennis, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate you. I have the best time when you come on.
Always a vast pleasure, my dear.
Thank you. Man, we have a great time, and what a wonderful chat today. I've saw so many faces in there that I know personally, and just good friends and great mods. And I just want to thank everybody for being here. I see all my channel members in here too. I appreciate y'all. And please come back and see me. What is today? Monday. So I'll be back on Wednesday. We have Brad Olson coming on the show. Brad is, if you ever go to a conference, Brad's usually a headliner at every conference that's ever been made. I swear. Brad's a wonderful speaker, an author. We're going to be talking about deep underground military bases, cryptids, and Antarctica. He is our resident expert on Antarctica, big time. So if you guys want to know what's really going on, the full disclosure starts in Antarctica, according to Brad, and we're really gonna dive deep down into Antarctica on Wednesday. You guys do not want to miss this show. It's gonna blow your mind. It's gonna blow my mind. Brad is so high vibe, good energy. Come back and see me 1 p.m. on Wednesday. Brad will be here, and the next Wednesday we do have Vic Cundiff coming on with Dogman Encounters. So yeah, we've got an interesting lineup. So Dennis, thank you again for being here. I will see you tonight in your chat. I can't wait. And y'all have a wonderful day. Everybody, please stay safe out there. Don't touch cursed objects. If you find something weird and you dig it up, just leave it. Please. Take advice from me and Dennis. Just leave it. Don't take it in your house, or you might get cursed. All right, Dennis. Have a wonderful day, y'all. I will see you guys back here on Wednesday. Bye, y'all.